They called us insects. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, with 17 trillion beings watching across 1,000 star systems, the Supreme Chancellor of the Vexry Empire looked directly at Earth's ambassador and laughed, not politely, not diplomatically, but with open contempt, the kind of laughter meant to crush a species before it could even speak. That day, Ambassador Sarachin stood alone before the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the known universe, and humanity learned a lesson we would never forget. The year was 2347, and after centuries of dreaming, failing, rebuilding, and reaching again, humanity had finally mastered faster-than-light travel. We believed we were ready to meet the galaxy. We imagined curiosity, caution, maybe even welcome. Instead, when our first diplomatic ship entered council space, we discovered that the stars were not empty, and they were not waiting for us. They were already ruled. The Galactic Council had existed for over 2 million years. It was made up of 47 major species, each older, larger, and more advanced than humanity in ways we could barely understand. Their empires stretched across hundreds of worlds. Their warships dwarfed our proudest creations. Their technology made our greatest achievements look primitive. And above all, they had rules. Strict rules about who could enter their circle and who was unworthy even to ask. Sarah Chun had spent 15 years preparing for her first contact. She was Earth's finest diplomat, a woman who had negotiated peace where war had lasted generations, a woman trained to speak calmly under pressure and to represent humanity with dignity no matter what stood before her. But none of that mattered the moment Krixveth the Eternal spoke. He had ruled the Vexry Empire for 8,000 years, and when Sarah introduced humanity as a peaceful civilization seeking friendship and trade, the chamber fell silent for half a heartbeat before exploding into laughter. Species after species joined in. Serpentine Vexry hissed with amusement. The massive Kroloth shook with deep animal-like bellows. Crystal-bodied Centauri shimmered in patterns that translated as mockery. For one horrifying moment, the entire council, beings who agreed on almost nothing, stood united in looking down on humanity. Krixveth called us little creatures. He said they had built empires when our ancestors were crawling in mud. He mocked our 47 ships and said his personal pleasure vessels carried more firepower than our entire civilization. He called our shields laughable, our engines slow, and our ambition ridiculous. But Sarah did not flinch. She stood there and asked a question no one expected. Then tell us what we must do to earn the council's respect. The laughter died. The chancellor narrowed his eyes. He explained that in 1,000,000 years, 412 species had requested entry into the council, and only 3 had succeeded. Each one had to prove that it brought something unique, valuable, and necessary to the galaxy. Then he asked the question meant to bury us. What do humans bring? Before Sarah could answer, Ambassador Vorn the Kroloth rose. He was one of the most feared beings in the chamber, a giant engineered warlord from a species that respected only strength. And he proposed a test. If humanity wanted recognition, then humanity could demonstrate its power. The council agreed immediately. We were given one chance. In 72 hours, our fleet would face a challenge designed by the Kroloth, and if we failed, we would leave dishonored and dismissed. Sarah spent those 72 hours in constant contact with Earth Command, reporting every insult, every detail, every shift in tone from the council. Her message reached Admiral James Morrison aboard the U.S. Defiant, humanity's flagship. Morrison was 73 years old, a veteran of 50 years in service, a man who had never lost a battle, but he had also never faced an enemy civilization older than recorded human history. When his officers reviewed the Council fleet data, the truth was obvious. In a direct fight, humanity would be annihilated. Their numbers, armor, energy capacity, and weapon systems exceeded ours on every measurable scale. Captain Lisa Rodriguez said what everyone was thinking. If this was a combat test, we were dead. Morrison agreed without hesitation, then said the words that changed our future. Who said anything about a straight fight? 72 hours later, Sarah returned to the council chamber, this time beside Admiral Morrison and a delegation of Earth officers in dress uniform. To the Council, they looked like children trying to play at power. Kriksveth announced the test with a smile already full of victory. Humanity would attempt to damage a decommissioned Kroloff battlecruiser, a vessel nearly 50 kilometers long, armored in gravitonium composite forged in the heart of a neutron star. It would have no crew, no active shields, no weapons. The Council said that if humanity could cause even the smallest visible damage, it would be considered enough. The trap was simple. The ship's armor was legendary. Nothing in the known galaxy had ever pierced it quickly, and even major Council weapons required prolonged bombardment over days to scratch it. They expected us to fail in public and leave humbled. Morrison only asked one question, and if we succeed? The chamber went still. No one had expected confidence. Kriksveth said that if by some impossible miracle humanity succeeded, we would receive provisional membership, free passage, trade access, and a seat in galactic affairs. Then he assured us that we would not succeed. The test was moved to the Omega Void, an empty region of deep space far from inhabited systems. There, humanity's entire fleet of 47 ships arranged itself in formation, facing the ancient Kroloff battlecruiser. 3,000 Council warships watched from a safe distance, gathered not for defense but for entertainment. They had come to witness our failure, to record it, and to remember it as the day humanity learned its place. On the bridge of the Defiant, Admiral Morrison stood motionless. Captain Rodriguez confirmed that all ships were in position and that the convergence array was fully charged. Morrison opened a fleet-wide channel to the Council observers and thanked them for the opportunity to demonstrate humanity's capabilities. Kriksveth mocked him one final time, suggesting he take all the hours allotted to him because he would need every second. Morrison replied, "That won't be necessary." Then he turned to tactical and gave a single order: fire. What happened next silenced the universe. Every human ship fired one beam of brilliant white light. Not laser fire, not plasma, not particles, but 47 perfectly synchronized energy streams converging on a single point in space exactly 1 kilometer in front of the battlecruiser. At that point, reality itself began to collapse. A darkness formed, darker than the emptiness around it, darker than anything any sensor could classify. It expanded in less than a second, from microscopic to city-sized, swallowing light, bending space, dragging the void inward. Then it collapsed. The implosion unleashed a burst of power so violent and sudden that for one impossible instant a newborn star appeared in the Omega Void. The shock wave struck the Kroloff warship with the force of cosmic extinction. Council ships reeled as sensors overloaded. Shields flared without being ordered to. Alarm systems screamed across 3,000 vessels. Then the light faded, and the battlecruiser was gone. Not broken, not disabled, not split apart and drifting. Gone. 50 kilometers of supposedly invincible Kroloff engineering had ceased to exist. Only expanding debris remained, fragments of armor glowing molten red as they spun through the darkness. The entire event had lasted less than 3 seconds. Back in the Grand Chamber, no one moved. Kriksveth the Eternal, ruler of worlds, sat frozen in stunned silence. Even Ambassador Vorn, whose species worshipped strength, looked shaken. He stared at the tactical recording and said in a voice that no longer sounded invincible that the destroyed ship was the pride of conquest, one of the oldest Kroloff battlecruisers in existence, commissioned 600,000 years earlier, its armor forged in conditions no known weapon should have overcome. Then he asked the only question left. "What did you do?" Admiral Morrison answered calmly over the comm channel. He said humanity called it the Convergence Array, a weapon developed during our early experimentation with FTL physics. It created a temporary artificial singularity, a miniature black hole held for only 0.003 seconds before forced collapse. That collapse released energy roughly equal to the output of an average yellow star over 1,000,000 years. He explained it in the same tone another man might use to describe weather. He then delivered a line that chilled every government in the galaxy. We have never used it before. We hope we never would. It is not a weapon of war. It is a weapon of absolute destruction. Everything within 50 kilometers simply ceases to exist. No armor, no shield, no material known to us can survive it. We call it the Planet Killer. And what you just saw was less than 1% of its maximum power. For 7 full minutes, no one in the Galactic Council spoke. Not one ambassador, not one military observer, not one ancient ruler. Then Krixveth asked the question no proud empire ever want to ask a younger civilization. How is this possible? How could a species barely 3,000 years into organized civilization and less than 500 years into spaceflight possess a weapon beyond anything developed in 2 million years of galactic history? This time Saracen answered. She stepped forward and spoke not with anger, but with terrible clarity. She said the answer was simple. The elder races had enjoyed stability. They had built systems, laws, and empires so vast that true existential fear had become a distant memory. They had no reason to create weapons of total annihilation, because for most of their history, they had no enemy capable of forcing them to imagine such horrors. Humanity had been shaped by the opposite. For all of our history, we had been at war, not against aliens, but against ourselves. Tribe against tribe, kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation, ideology against ideology. We spent our entire rise inventing more efficient ways to destroy one another. We split the atom and turned it into a bomb. We harnessed fusion and imagined extinction. We decoded life and built plagues. We took every scientific breakthrough and first asked not how it could help us, but how it could protect us or how it could kill. So when we reached the stars, our first thought was not wonder alone. It was fear. What if something older, stronger, and cruel was already out there? What if the universe had predators? And so, humanity did what humanity has always done when frightened. We prepared. We built a convergence array. We built ships designed not to dominate, but to ensure survival through deterrence. Sarah reminded the council that we had arrived offering friendship, trade, cooperation, and peace. We asked only to be heard, and instead they laughed. Then she said, quietly enough that the whole chamber had to lean into the silence to hear her, imagine how we would have responded if you had threatened us. That was the moment everything changed. The fear in the chamber was no longer fear of a weapon alone. It was fear of understanding the species behind it. The council saw humanity clearly for the first time, not as a child race stumbling upward, but as a people forged in internal conflict, disciplined by survival, creative under pressure, and dangerous precisely because we had spent so long living with danger. Morrison broke the silence again, and his words were as important as the demonstration. He said humanity did not seek conquest. We did not wish to rule the galaxy or enslave weaker species. We wanted peace, learning, growth, exchange, and a place among the stars. But we would not be mocked, dismissed, or threatened. He said humanity did not seek conquest. We did not wish to rule the galaxy or enslave weaker species. We wanted peace, learning, growth, exchange, and a place among the stars. But we would not be mocked, dismissed, or threatened.